Morning, everyone. It's Audrey at Stitchy Witch 42. This is not a tutorial video. It's going to be a little bit different from what I've done before, but that's okay because I'm planning on doing a second video later on today, which is what I normally do. Yeah, like that made sense, right? So if you have visited with me before, you know that I have said that I can sew, but I'm not a seamstress. If this is your first time watching me, you get to find out that I can sew, but I'm not a seamstress. But either way, thank you for coming and visiting, and I hope that somebody gets a giggle out of today's video. It is Monday, the 21st of October, 2019. And again, the title of this video is, This is Not a Sewing Tutorial. So, this is how I go about sewing something. I know that there are all sorts of tutorials on YouTube and you can find them just about everywhere, and yeah, it would be helpful if I watched those ahead of time, but that's not the way my brain works. And today you're going to find out how my brain works, and it's scary. I know, because I live with it. A couple of months ago, a friend of mine on Instagram, Stacy, she is my sister witch. She is at Stacy Postal Stitcher on Instagram. She sent me this hanger. See, you can hang it right there. And I thought, what am I going to do with that? But I know I can do something with it. So I set it aside, and time went by, and I started stitching a piece by Barbara Anna. I started a piece on the 1st of July, Oh Christmas Tree by Barbara Anna. I started it for the Christmas in July Sal that Diana, It Is Kismet Stitches, hosted this year. And then the next day, I started a second Barbara Anna piece. This one was called Spooky Tree. I finished Spooky Tree first. And my thought was, as I was stitching it, that I could make a wall hanger out of it and I could use this. And then I was looking at the design for a Christmas tree, and I realized that it's a similar width, and maybe I could use this hanger for both pieces. That was my idea. So, I've shown both of these finished pieces. I'm not going to show them right now. I will show them later on in the video. I have to tell you the story of how I stitched my wall hanging, because this is not a tutorial. So I started both of these in July. I finished Spooky Tree in July. I finished Oh Christmas Tree in September. And then they sat upstairs in the library for a month, because how do I make a wall hanging? What do I want it to look like when it's finished? And I have to let my brain run with that for a while to figure each piece out, because looking at other tutorials would be way too easy, and that's not the way my brain works, okay? So I have these two finished pieces sitting upstairs. And finally I decide, well, I need to put interfacing on them. But I don't know yet how wide they're going to be. So just put interfacing on the back of the whole piece of linen. Why not? my brain. So I have a tabletop ironing board, and I set it over there on my kitchen counter because I got a bunch of different outlets over there. And I brought my fabric down, and I brought my interfacing down, and I ironed it on because I learned how to iron from watching Donna Ray at Flannel Jammy Farms. And I ironed from the back, and everything was nice and smooth and pretty, and then I took it back upstairs and let them sit on my crafting table for a few more weeks because I didn't know what the next step was. I had my backing fabric picked out for both of them, but I hadn't cut anything yet because I was kind of scared of that part. I was kind of scared of the whole process, okay? Last Tuesday, I told myself I had to do it. I just had to do it. So I went into my library, my crafting table. My 2 stitched pieces are there. And I took my hanger and I measured it from here to here, from my fingertip to fingertip, because this opens on this end. So I measured it from here to here. And then I measured it about 41 times because, you know, on the 42nd time, it might actually be right. They were all the same. Go figure. And I wrote it down on my Post-it pad. And then I remembered that I had to add a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides. So I added that to my count. And then I thought, well, now I have to cut my fabric, my stitched piece, and I have to center my design on my stitched piece. And when I used my ruler, I bought myself a cutting mat a while back, and I bought one of those big, like 6.5 inch wide cutting rulers. The piece, or the width that I needed for my finished piece was the size of that ruler. And I was like, oh, is that ever going to happen again for me? No, probably not. Well, now I have to find the center of the ruler so that I can position that and figure out my, do the math stuff that I'm generally not good at. Did you know that on the center of those rulers, there's actually a line that marks the center of the rulers? Oh my God. I learned that last Tuesday. Yes. So I cut my linen out with my stitch design on the back of it, on the front of it, and the interfacing on the back of it. And then, me being me, I took that ruler and a pencil, and on the interfacing, I drew the 1/4 inch seam allowance. Yes, I know there are lines on the sewing machine for 1/4 inch seam allowance and all that kind of good stuff. I don't sew very often. I can sew, but it's a process. It really is. So now I have to cut my backing piece, the backing fabric. This might make some of my friends cringe, and I'm really, really sorry about it, but it's the way that I work because I'm lazy this way. I made sure that I had a straight edge on my backing fabric, and I laid it on the table, on the cutting table, and I laid my stitched piece that I just cut, and I made sure that the one edge was straight with the other one. And so here's that piece lying on top of the backing fabric. I took my ruler and I put it right here next to the stitched piece, moved the stitched piece, and cut a line. No math involved. It was the same width as the other one. That worked. It worked. Then I went over to my sewing machine and I started with Oh Spooky Tree, and I sewed my seam allowance. Not a problem. Came downstairs, had my ironing board set up again. I turned my stitched piece right side out. I finger pressed the edges, and then I ironed it again from the back because Donna Ray. Then I went upstairs and it's like, how am I going to finish the bottom of this piece? Am I going to just square it off? No, I don't really want to do that. Notice I'm figuring this out after I've stitched the sides, sewn the sides together. Am I going to square it off? No, don't want to square it off. I thought maybe I could make it a V shape. And I went and I looked at the fabric, and I hadn't cut the top or the bottom of my pieces yet, but there was not enough fabric on the bottom of either one of them to do a V shape. But then I thought, I could do triangles. How do I do triangles? So I had to sit there and think about that for a while. And when I was thinking about it, I came up with an idea, because about 2 weeks ago, I had Mark make a template for me for something that I'm going to finish. And I thought that I could use that as the template for my little triangles. And I'm thinking this through, and the process is hard, okay? This is not a sewing tutorial. I can sew. I'm not a seamstress. So this takes me a while. So I'm using this template to get the idea for my size. And I realize that I'm going to need 3 of them across the bottom of this piece. And I need to add a 1/4 inch to the one edge because of the seam allowance. So I take my backing fabric and I cut a strip that's 2.5 inches wide. And then because I need 3 points, I cut 6 3-inch pieces out of it. And then I had to think about how to sew them, because it's a process, because I don't watch tutorials ahead of time. This isn't a tutorial. So finally, I realized that if I pin the 2 pieces together and I put the pin so that it is in the center with the point down, that I can use my ruler and I can draw from the right corner to the center middle and the other corner to the center middle, and then I can go and I can sew these. And I do that. When I get to the 3rd one, I think to myself, maybe it'd be better if I did a little bit of back stitching right there on the point, make it a little bit stronger. Notice it took me to the 3rd one to figure that out. Not a seamstress. So I trimmed them. I took them downstairs, turned them right side out. I ironed them. I went back upstairs, and I'm now looking at my stitched piece, which is stitched to the back. And I have these 3 points, and I'm trying to figure out, how do I attach them? Oh my God, how do I attach them? So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about it, and finally I decide, okay, I'm going to pin them on, and this is how I pin them on. And I get them ready, and I go over to the sewing machine, and I'm looking at it at the sewing machine, and I realize that if I do that, I'm going to be stitching them to the front of my piece, and they will end up on the inside. So I unpinned everything, turned my stitched piece back right side in. Then I sat there and I looked at it again. It's like, is this going to work if I attach the wide raw end of the triangle to the bottom of the fabric and I stitch it? Is it going to hang right? Made my brain hurt. It really made my brain hurt. But I did it. I laid them out on the fabric. I pinned the 3 triangles there. I sewed the 1/4 inch seam allowance. I turned it right side out, and the points weren't hanging. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? They were still pinned to the fabric, and as soon as I took the pins out, they were hanging the way they were supposed to. Not a seamstress. Not a tutorial. Okay. Bring them back downstairs. Iron the whole thing again from the back. Iron the points. And now I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I have to make a pocket on the top that's going to slip on this. Because, you know, this opens up. And I have to be able to slide it on there. So that took more thinking. So finally I went over to my cutting table and I finally straightened up the top edge of both my design piece and my backing fabric because it seemed like the logical thing to do at the time. And then I drew a mark halfway, half an inch, not halfway, half an inch down from the top of that straight edge. And I went over to my sewing machine and I sewed that line. And then I came downstairs to the ironing board again and I folded my fabric over there on that stitched line and ironed it down, and then I folded it over again and I ironed it down, and then I did the blind stitch or the whip stitch or whatever we want to call it, stitching that closed to just the back of the banner. Want to see what I did? Because I'm actually quite pleased with it. This is Spooky Tree. Isn't that nice? I'm not showing you the bottom. I'm not showing you the points. There's the bottom of it. And here's the back of it. And I'm showing my crappy stitching because it is. Oh, by the way, there might be adult language in this video. I don't know. We don't know how far it's going to go. Anyway, I was really tickled with how this turned out. And I immediately posted a picture on Instagram. And then I posted one on Facebook. And the 3 groups that I post on most often are the Stitchers Coven, the Pacific Northwest Stitchers, and my friend Becca has a group. She's from Scotland. It's called the Arty Farty Stitchy Bitchy Club. So it works. And it fits. And I was so excited about this that I posted the pictures on those 4 places. Colleen, who is a member of Pacific Northwest Stitchers, she's also one half of Stitching with the Sisterlies, she comes back and she goes, oh, you made prairie points. I'm like, what? What's a prairie point? Apparently these are prairie points. I learned something new. So this is the banner that I made out of Spooky Tree, and I am really, really pleased with it. I used the fabric that Corey, who is at the Crafty Jack on Instagram, and she's the Silent Stitcher on YouTube. I used her fabric because it has pumpkin, and it has a candle, has a bat, there's pumpkin, and there's the candle, and we know I didn't make those things. I turned them into bats. So I thought this fabric was just perfect for this. This probably took me 4 hours on Tuesday to stitch. And when I was done with it, I was done. I was not ready to attempt to do Oh Christmas Tree yet at all. Now I want to show you a piece that I stitched that was finished by a professional seamstress. This is a pattern that my sister Patty bought for me 4 or 5 years ago. It's Witch's Night Out, and I don't remember who it's by. I could look it up if I have to. Ask me and I will. But when Patty bought this for me, she bought me the whole kit. She bought me the pattern, she bought me the 28 count crystal kermit fabric, and then she got me the top and the bottom. This is the first time that I had ever stitched anything 1/1, and it took me 2 years to finish this piece. And I know it's far away, but this is a beautiful, beautiful piece. And I think it's absolutely gorgeous. But when I got it finished, I had no idea how to add that or that to the top of it. Fortunately, I have a friend, and her name is Bernie, and she is a professional seamstress. She does a lot of quilting. I have watched her buy a piece of used furniture and decide that she wanted to make a slipcover for it, so she just did. She knits, she crochets, she creates her own patterns. She is a model stitcher for one of the major clothing pattern companies, and I can't remember which one. Bernie is a professional seamstress. So I asked her if she would finish this for me. And I gave her all the pieces. I gave her the interfacing. I gave her the backing fabric that I chose for it. And I said, when you're done, charge me whatever you think it's worth, because I have no idea. I don't think she charged me enough. And I'm not going to tell you what she charged me, because that's not the point of the matter. This is the back. I want you to look at that. She tapered in the edges. She lined it with seam binding, seam tape, seam binding, I don't know. And she did a blind stitch on there. And that's gorgeous. And she did the same thing on the bottom. This is professional. This is, I don't have a clue what I'm doing, and I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to take all day long to do it. And it's a bit wonky down here at the bottom, and I didn't remember to backstitch on the bottom of the points so that I don't think they're going to fall apart, you know, but, and this on the back. I am so proud of this. I am so proud of this, and I think it's gorgeous. But like I said, it took me maybe 4 hours to figure this out on Tuesday. Made my brain hurt. So I waited until Thursday. I waited until I had a fresh brain, and I did it again. This time, I did it with Oh Christmas Tree. And I did all the same steps, exactly the same. And this is Oh Christmas Tree. I have the prairie points on the bottom. I even managed to get a little deer and put it in the center. Wasn't planned, not a tutorial. I don't know how to do these things. I can sew when I have to, but it's a process. I did the same thing on the back. It's not pretty, but you don't look at the back. And the nice thing about it is that I get to use this hanger that my friend Stacy gave me for both of these pieces. That would be a nice screenshot. I don't know if that'll work or not. Anyway, this is my not a tutorial on how I finished Oh Christmas Tree by Barbara Anna and Spooky Tree by Barbara Anna into wall hangings, because I had this beautiful hanger and I needed to use it, and now I get to have it and use it for both Halloween and Christmas. So there you go. this is not a tutorial. This is how I sew, which is why I don't sew very often. The scary thing in my brain is that my friend Lori, textilist, she gave me a quilt pattern. It's a really, really pretty quilt pattern. And I really, really, really want to stitch it. And I told her that next summer I would. But that she and Lisa Smith, Kindred Stitcher, they have to hold my hands the whole way because I don't know how to sew. I can. It's a process. Anyway, I am going to put this stuff away. I'm going to get myself set up for a regular video. If you want to watch both of them, you're more than welcome to. If you don't want to watch either one, that's okay too. Anyway, I will see you in just a little while. Until then, live long and stitch on, my friends. Bye-bye.